Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Let's Face It podcast. This is my journey with Dominic Kearns. Before we start and before we get stuck in, it's great to have Dominic here. Sean is back from tour. Everything's wonderful. It's Monday morning and we're all happy. So thanks very much for tuning in. We did just recently announce our first live show, our first live event for the 12th of January 2023. So the perfect way, I suppose, to start off the new year. Get into a room with like-minded people who want to do well, with some amazing guest speakers around nutrition, goal setting, visualization for the first half, and then in the second half we'll have a live podcast with four very, very special guests. Annette Kelly, who was here from Little Penny Thoughts, Mick Conlon, the boxer, Neil McManus, who's a very good friend of ours, an Antrim hurler as well, and Conor Mader, a Tyrone footballer. So it's going to be a great night, and we'll put the link below if you want to buy a ticket and share on your feeds or whatever. But no, thanks very much for the support, and yeah, check it out on my Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. But yeah, so today we'll have a very special guest. Special guest, yeah. Dominic Kearns, who is recently just announced that you're going to be going on the Antrim jerseys as Pearse. Dominic is the CEO of Pearse and Chief Executive.
That's right.
Yeah. And I suppose from years going past, even in my experience, looking back from the past sponsors within Antrim, like Caragh Concrete and Phonacab, now Pearse, you know, it's very often we don't actually know the people behind the jerseys, the people behind the sponsors. And I thought that this was just a great idea that we both came together and like, right, let's show the Antrim people who you are, who Pearse is, because it's people often take sponsorship and stuff like that for granted, Dominic, and don't see the work that you actually put in on a daily basis to be able to get to this level where you can give back to your own county. And like, just on behalf of suppose from the senior hurlers, in my point of view, and as an Antrim person, an Antrim fan, and someone who does love Antrim and wants Antrim to do well, I want to thank you for what you have done. I suppose not just now with your name on it. I know you've done a lot and you do support a lot of my friends too. Dominic just recently supported Neil McManus going to Africa as well with the planting the trees and stuff like that. So it's amazing what you are doing, and I think it's fantastic, and I just can't wait to get chatting to you and just find out more about you. But I suppose, like, with the whole idea of this podcast is, you know, this is my journey, and you've been on a hell of a journey, I suppose, throughout, you know, business and life. And we'll probably just get stuck into, I suppose, your childhood and tell me a wee bit more about that, and what was it like growing up, and where you came from, and who you came from. And
yeah. So I'm from a wee place called Dunloy. I suppose about 40 minutes north of Belfast. Born and bred there. You know, son of two very hard working people, and probably that's where I get the work drive from. And you know, GA obviously is part of the community, massive part of growing up. You know, probably 25% of your time is spent at the local GA ground, whether it's training, whether it's playing matches, or whether it's standing on the sidelines watching a match. You know, that's basically the heart of the community. So, you know, great childhood. Very, very fond memories of playing with all the teams up through the grades.
So tell me a wee bit more about school and like your school life. Obviously you had that love for GAA and hurling and stuff like that, spending time within Dunloy, going to the club, you know, friends around that area, and like I know myself, it's amazing, and the connections that you do have, and it's nearly like a family within a family, isn't it? You know, hurling and stuff.
You know, the primary school in Dunloy is right beside the GAA grounds, so literally at lunchtime you were throwing your lunchbox, throwing your bag, changing your shoes, and the way you were away outside. And if you're lucky enough, the teachers would let you go into the pitch and play away. So, you know, that's what we spent our lunchtimes doing. I suppose it's like any other kind of community that GA is in the centre of it. You know, that's what the kids want to do as soon as they get out, and then get back into the classroom thereafter. But I suppose locally in our village too, we've, you know, the state-of-the-art facilities that we have, and it's all for the youth. It's all for that younger generation that's coming up through.
Yeah, and it is like, and even whenever you're driving in the Dunloy, you can actually feel the energy and feel that sort of it's just the village and the spirit and the everyone wanting to do well and sort of win championships, and obviously villages have their own shit too, like in terms of, you know, whatever, like anywhere, do you know what I mean? But you can't feel that energy, and the people even, you know, very welcoming and stuff like that. But even in terms of, go ahead.
I know there was a fellow actually I was speaking to one time, said something similar. He said he felt that as soon as you hit the village, you understood it's a GA community, because you're either meeting a kid with a hurling stick, you're either seeing a green and gold flag on a lamppost, or even a kid with football, so you can feel it as soon as you come out. So
it's so true, and the first thing you do whenever you drive in, you see Pappy's Bakery, and it's just so, like, isn't it? It's just so much part of the village, and even anywhere around Ireland that I've, you know, I am from Antrim, I play front room with the law, Pappy's Bakery, do you know what I mean? And it's all that, and it's class. Like.
So you've had a soda then, don't have you?
I'm off the sodas now, so I hope Darglease doesn't watching this. But even in terms of academics in school then, you know, obviously you had that love for the GA and stuff, but what about in terms of school work and even going up through into your teenage years, and then you went to the big smoke then, did you, for university?
I did. I went to Georgetown, so look, you know, in terms of how academic I was, I wouldn't say I was overly academic. I probably sat middle of the table in terms of the class. Probably the same in secondary school, but what I probably done was I probably didn't concentrate too much during the year, but when it come to the crunch, whenever there's exams, I would always knuckle down and got the exams so you could get through, and I suppose that's what I done through GCSEs, A levels, and same again university. That's particularly prevalent in university. You spend the whole year partying, and then there's like a 4 to 6 week period you just have to knuckle down and get the exams done. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like, and what did you study in university then?
Accountancy.
And we actually, whenever we met up a couple of weeks ago, we actually touched on this about the reason you went into sort of studying accountancy. Tell me a wee bit more about that and why you went down that route.
Yeah, I suppose I remember back in St. Louis and Ballymena where I went to secondary school, there was a careers teacher, I think her name was Miss Dinah. I can't remember exactly, but I actually met her in the Culture Land one day. She was in for lunch, and I went over and thanked her for this, from what I'm about to tell you. But you know, they sit you down and they tell you, or they ask you, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up, or what do you want to do whenever you get your qualifications, or what do you want to study so that you can do the job you want to do. And I remember saying to her, I've always had an ambition to run my own business. I don't see myself doing a normal job because I think it would bore me to tears. I want to get involved in running my own business, being kind of master your own destiny kind of thing. And I remember her saying, I can't remember the exact percentages she said, but whatever percentage of the top CEOs of top global companies are all from a finance background. So she says, go and do accountancy and that'll always stand to you. So that's what I've done. I went and done the accountancy exams in university, and thereafter and became an accountant. But I never became an accountant to be an accountant.
Yeah,
it sounds funny.
No, it's amazing because that's something like, because we sat and spoke for probably 2 hours that day, like, and I actually said the only problem I had, there was no camera. Because some of the things that I learnt off you, and even some of the things that you planted in my head to think about, even because I'm obviously looking to start it, like, to build a business here. Well, let's face it, and it's planted a few seeds with me, even in terms of what way you have approached things, and it's just. Yeah, it was fascinating to hear that part of it, because a lot of people who want to be a businessman would automatically think that, right, I'll go to university and study business. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you were like, right, I want to be, and it is interesting, but like,
but I get it now why she told me to do that, because and I sit down with our senior team anytime, and there's a set of accounts that are set in front of you, and you need to understand the underlying finances of the business. As a CEO, having that knowledge and understanding what those figures mean is a key component of where the business goes.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I totally get why she said that.
Yeah, and it's obviously stewed to you, because, like, even just in my notes here, you're chief executive of Pearse, but there's also a numerous other amount of businesses that you are the chair of the board of, including Weber Optic, B4B Group, and Weave. did you help start them businesses and now you're chairing the board? Is that?
Yeah, so I've at some point in time been doing some level role in each one of those. B4B group and was the first main business I started a small business before B4B, and my partner on that side, Thomas O'Hagan, he was the founder himself of B4B Telecoms. Then we brought the companies together and formed B4B Group. So for probably four years was CEO in that business as well. Until then we started discussing the whole Fibrous venture, which was always going to be a much bigger beast and took a lot more thought and obviously a lot more funding. But yeah, and fibre optics, that business was started at the exact same time as Fibrous. They're basically the people and the engineers that put all the network and all the fibre and the network into the ground that we need to run our services on. And then you mentioned Weave there. It's a start-up along with Thomas O'Hagan. Basically only been going 8-9 months. It's a similar type of play to Fibrous, but it's charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. So it's again thinking about what do we need to put, what infrastructure do we need to put out there that enables people to go about their daily business. Same as broadband. Broadband's an essential for people. It's going to be soon that electric charging for electric vehicles is going to be essential for people once we all move to EVs. So thinking about those things in the future and making sure that everything's in place for it.
And that's incredible, the very fact that you have built successful businesses, but you're like, right, what's next? Like, what are people going to need after this? And just going back to even touching on, before we even maybe go into electric cars and stuff like that, the charging broadband, and it's something that like I take for granted. Most people in the city probably take for granted. You go into the house, you have Wi-Fi, you connect to it. You go into a coffee shop, you connect to your Wi-Fi, you can sit and you can work away, and and you don't even think twice about it. But from following you on LinkedIn and seeing that the stuff you do sort of diving a wee bit more into Fibrous, what they're about, and it's absolutely incredible the whole different side and the whole different world in terms of digital poverty. Something that I do want to touch on in terms of no internet in rural areas, because I always was under the impression of people in rural areas they have other ways of making money, they have other ways in terms of farming and stuff like that. But the way the world has went, it's if you don't have internet, then you can't make a living, you can't do these things, you can't make breakthroughs and stuff like that. Tell me a wee bit more about the work that Fibrous does in sort of rural Ireland, if you like.
So, like a bit like yourself, Donald, you kind of understood a bit about what broadband is for you, but you probably never considered the lack of broadband and what it actually means for people, particularly people that are living rurally. And I suppose I hadn't fully appreciated it, to be quite honest, and until we get Fibrous up and running, and we were actually feeling and seeing and hearing the impact that our services were having for people. You say it's the most rural and remote parts of the north that we cover, just the north at the moment. And with so many stories about how it transforms families, how it allows kids and graduates get to be able to get onto the jobs market. There's multinational companies now that, the Amazons. I was at a conference last week where I was sitting beside a girl, and she was saying that her sister was now working for Amazon because of a Fibrous connection. Because of the ability to work from home.
How does that make you feel?
Everything about Fibrous makes me feel really proud. Okay. May it be what we're delivering in terms of service, what we're doing in terms of the people that work for us. When Conal Henry is also the co-founder of Fibrous, when we sat down discussing the whole thing around Fibrous and could we actually do it? The three things we said was, one, we're going to have an impact. Two, that we would have a legacy after, maybe when our time is finished with the business. But three, we're going to have a bit of crack whilst we're doing it. So in terms of, you know, number one, certainly the impact that we're having is it's visible, it's tangible. I hear it every day, so I'm actually very, very proud of what we've done in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
We're only running really 3 and a bit years.
Which is mental.
Yeah.
Tell me a wee bit more. I know we touched on it even before, like you told me a wee story there about the guy in the rural area, like the
outside Larne. Yeah, so the guy lives just outside. Well, when I say just outside Larne, quite a bit out of Larne, and he lives in a cottage. He has no running water. Has to go to a well to get his water. His toilets are outside. Actually, so one of the guys that was with us at the time when we were talking to him asked to go to the toilet, and he pointed over to the hedge. He says, "There's the toilet over there." But he has fibrous broadband. You know?
And how does he use that then in terms of his work or his daily life? Or?
Yeah, well, his family, or a lot of his family, emigrated.
Right.
So that was a big thing for him. You know, he's practically living in wilderness, but that didn't mean he couldn't talk to his family. You know, and he's up and running with his laptop and his Zoom, and he can talk and do what anybody else can do. You know, if you're living in Belfast, you're living in Dublin, that guy 4 miles outside of Larne, sitting on the side of the hill in the cottage, can do the exact same things.
In the toilet out the back.
Well, exactly.
No, but it's incredible. And talking about making an impact is one of the three that is quite clearly making an impact. Not even in terms of business and stuff like that, but people's lives. You know what I mean? And it goes a lot deeper than that. People need them connections, Dominic. People, and I'm very much about this, you know, connecting with people. And we talked about it at the start about spending time with people who want to do well and like-minded people, in business or sport or whatever. So actually being able to have them connections, it goes a lot deeper than having an internet. Even for our mental well-being and emotional well-being, how we're feeling with people, you know, reaching out.
You know, I'll give you another example. You know, in terms of the actual mental side of it, the emotional side of it for people. There's, you know, a farmer west of the Ban. He hugged one of our engineers one day when they actually were able to connect up the farm, because now that the infrastructure was there, his son now, because he didn't want to limit his son's ability to do whatever he wanted to do, but having the son at home allowed him to help out in the farm. So the son now was planning to build a house at home, was planning to have his family there. So for the farmer, this was just great, and
it's incredible.
The emotion came out of him. He was hugging our engineer and also.
But it's incredible, and even it goes a lot deeper again than that. And I be, as you know, very good mates with Neil McManus, and he's mad keen about turning the old police station in Cushendall into a hub for the community and stuff like that. So there's people not, you know, it's obviously saves them from travelling up and down to Belfast, but even bigger than that, it stops people from actually moving out of Cushendall. It's keeping the community in the community to have more families to ultimately help Cushendall win more championships.
Absolutely. Don't think for 1 second I'm not thinking about stuff like Afford and Roy as well.
Do you know, and it does, and the platform that you and I have, and you're obviously able to provide these services in these rural communities, which would be a sin if it got to that stage, and that's probably the way the world was going in terms of people just wanting to move to the city and being, you know, having access to these things that I just always took for granted, to be about like yourself before you got your eyes open. But it's absolutely fascinating. And then I suppose, like you mentioned, legacy there, and going into legacy, what does that look like for you in terms of what if, like, I do sometimes. Whenever I'm working with boys in the rehab centre, I'd be like, well, what's your 80-year-old self telling you? You know, in terms of the mistakes you've made, and they would look back and they would be like, well, you're only 40, you're only 30, you're only 20, do you know what I mean? You have the rest of your life, and it's like, what at the end of all this, Dominic, what would you love to look back and say, do you know what, I done this, or this is how I felt, or what would you like to feel, or are you even thinking about that at the minute?
I suppose I don't spend that much time thinking about it. I suppose I'm thinking about it now and again. In terms of what we're doing in Fibrous, there's a tangible legacy there. We're going to be covering, you know, at least a third or close to half of all the properties in the north with a broadband service that's going to be there for 50 years. That network's going to be in the ground for 50 years serving people. So, you know, and hopefully as Fibrous grows and becomes a household name, you know, I'll always be associated with Fibrous. I'll always be associated with starting Fibrous. So that's, I suppose, something that I would think about now and again. But I suppose it's what's that, how do I find contentment after Fibrous? So that's probably what more I think about. And you talked about Neil thinking about what he's going to do in Cushendall with the old Cushendall police station. I'm now starting to think back to my own community, right? What can I do to find that contentment back at home? And I have a million ideas, I think about, where things are in terms of fuel poverty, the cost of living in terms of electricity, oil. I'm thinking that, I know I can start projects at home that could be the benefit of the community. And that's, once I'm finished in my business life and I'm comfortable, my family's comfortable, then that's where I see myself moving into those kind of community focused projects, as well as I'll always be doing commercial stuff and I'll always be doing business, but maybe refocus some of my time. Talk about contentment, that's a big thing for an entrepreneur. It's trying to find that thing that gives you that contentment. Starting a business and getting a business up and running does it for you, but it doesn't do everything for you.
100%, and it's something that even on obviously a lot smaller scale that I'm experiencing at the minute. Like it's something that as a society we're always like, I'll be happy when I lose a stone. I'll be happy when I get on the Altron team consistently.
I'd be happy enough for that too.
Do you know what I mean? And it's all like, so why can I not believe it now? Do you know what I mean? I'll be happy when I build, let's face it, into a company, if you like. But why can't I enjoy the process? Do you know what I mean? Why can I not be happy in the moment? And it's sort of, whenever I sort of accepted all that I can only control what I can control on a daily basis, and then I sort of start to get a wee bit of contentment and being like, right, I'm comfortable in my own skin, I have a vision, I have a goal, and I know where I want to go. So control the controllables nearly, but you're right, and it's something that, like, the fact that you're so successful means that you always want more. Do you know what I mean? And it's that sort of thing of never standing still. But like the three big pillars that we talked about, the last time we spoke, and it was something that struck me a lot. Three big pillars or values to your life is your family, business, and hurling. And I'm going to put in hurling/community because I suppose the Loy hurling community village,
it's all the same.
It's all the same thing. Is that fair enough reflection in saying that? And so I suppose them three things. Tell me a wee bit more about why they're your core values and why. I suppose why family is first, because you have Jennifer, who's your wife, and three lovely kids, Pearse, Caragh and Fianna.
Yep.
And you're away, you're sponsoring Antrim, you're working every day of the week, you're out there and you're giving back to the community, you're doing all these things, but at the end of the day, there's a man here, there's a person, there's a human being who loves like a beautiful wife and three beautiful children. How do you find the time to do that, and what measures do you sort of put in place to have that balance?
Yeah, so there's a saying around home when it comes to hurling wives, they call them the hurling widows. So Jenny's lucky in that sense that I've long since finished playing hurling, but she's kind of in the same boat when it comes to business. But she's very understanding from that point of view. And before we even started our family and before we get married, she knew what my plan was. It's to get that, be able to get in a position where our family's comfortable, and then we can start to enjoy life and start to enjoy the kids and make sure they get everything they need. So I suppose you're right, family, business and hurling is my three purposes in life as I see them, the three parts of my shamrock. And in that order, I might say I was going to say,
is that back to front?
No. I better clarify that in case she's listening. But yeah, no, family, business, and hurling, or GA or community, whatever way you wanna say it, are the three things that keep me going. Obviously, my family actually only in the last 4 or 5 years has me and Jennifer got married and had our 3 kids, and I took a conscious decision myself to kind of focus on the business part first before I started the family, because I've seen it plenty of mates and people that have seen that have had their family early, and it's always been that they're always, you know, working to survive, and you're always chasing it. And I never ever wanted to be in that position. Not that it's a bad place to be. It's just more of a challenge, trying to make family life work, and be there for your kids. Because, you know, I take my own father for example. Like, he worked in England for many a year. To go, we had to go where the work was to sustain the family. So I kind of made a conscious decision that I'd try and get that kind of level footing first before I started the family. Which means the pressure's off a little.
Yeah, and it's incredible, even like at a young age, I suppose, because you're still, what age are you now?
37.
You know, you're relatively young in terms of the business world and stuff like that, even in life, like, you know.
Yeah. Don't feel it.
You know, but even to have that, you had to make that decision obviously early enough in your 30s, you know, even the show the level of like maturity in a way, to be like, right, I'm going to, you know, put these things, measures in place because I know where I want to get to, is unbelievable, because it's so often that we do just, things just happen, do you know what I mean? And then the next thing you're just in it and you're just like, shit, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
Do you know? And then you're having to juggle things, and you're having to, you know, you can't put all your energy into one thing if you have 3 different things that are equally as important. Is what I'm trying to say?
No, because I you know, I remember, you know, late teens, early 20s, you know, I probably wasn't the guy that was out every Saturday night.
Yes.
But I was, you know, if I wasn't out on a Saturday night, or if I wasn't out on a Friday night, I was probably sitting in my porta cabin at the back of the house thinking about a business plan, or thinking about something like that. And at the time, you'd have got slagged for it. You're weirdo, what you doing, why you not coming out with us? But I just had a different focus at that time of my life. But everybody does things differently, you know. That was just my way.
And it's incredible, it really is. Just before we move on, I actually want to even ask you about that in terms of, because it happens a lot, Dominic, you know, people getting to a certain age, you grew up obviously with a certain group of friends, some of them obviously you're still friends with. Like, did there ever become a point in your life where you were like, this is the direction I'm going, that's the direction they're going, I sort of have to trust my own gut and go with that, and you lost sort of connections with people or anything like that? Maybe a wee bit different in the country, I don't know. I
think it is. In communities, it's different, because you're always running into people.
Okay.
You know, if you're living in Belfast or whatever, I can see the scenario where you don't see people for a long time. But you're always running in to the people you grew up with. I'm always struck by some Sambo says. Sambo always talks about, you know, about the guys that you played hurling with, and the guys that come up through. Those are the guys that will carry to your grave, and that's what it is. That's what it means to actually live in a community. But, you know, it's fair to say, you know, maybe 1 or 2 my mates from that time back at school probably went on to do similar things like me, but the majority of them just done their own thing, and whether it's tradesmen or went into normal jobs rather than trying to start businesses and run businesses. So yeah, you kind of do it at a certain point. You know, probably starting late teens, early 20s, start to kind of move away from the pack. If you have your own way of going, or you have a direction you want to go, you kind of do move away from the pack. Yeah,
and I think it's even for people who are watching, who are maybe thinking about, you know, wanting to be as successful as you are in terms of building the business and brands and giving back and having the identity and building a legacy. Sometimes you do have to make them decisions that are tough, but it's for the best interest of where you want to go to.
Like. It is. It can be a tough decision. Yeah. If you don't feel particularly strong about yourself.
Yes.
You know, the risk of it can be a lonely place sometimes. You know, funny, talking to somebody recently who actually said that to me. Surely, Dominic, you find it lonely sometimes to be the CEO of a company, and it can be, because there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and sometimes you just feel like that. It's not something that I ever dwell on, but it can be a lonely place whenever you're deciding to do something that's different and not really everybody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's whenever you just have to trust yourself, and you touched on it there, which is powerful, and it's near enough just being comfortable in your own skin and believing in yourself, and I talk about it all the time, loving yourself. Do you know what I mean? And having that respect for yourself is this is where I want to go. But like you've built like these businesses, you have an unbelievable reputation. You really do. Anybody who I've spoke to has nothing but great words to say about you. So there, in a way, is the legacy coming into it. Do you know what I mean? And the bit of crack along the way. Do you know? And I've no doubt that you do have a bit of crack. In terms of the sponsorship, because I know you do a lot of sponsorship, but even in terms of Antrim GAA as a whole, how much does that mean to you, Dominic, and how much does it mean to Pearse as a company?
Well, I suppose taking the first question, you know, what does it mean to me? You know, on any given Sunday, there's me and two guys from home, two buddies from home. You'd find us anywhere in Ireland following the hurling team. I'm a hurling man, so I'd make no apologies for that. Obviously, very supportive of footballers too, but on any given Sunday, you would find us jumping in the car on a Sunday morning and heading to, you know, a Division 2 National League match in Laois or whatever. So you have to be kind of mad in the head. You have to be. I know. you would know. Passionate. Again, I talked about it earlier. One of my purposes is hurling. I love hurling. Was brought up with it, so I'll follow the team. And I suppose when it comes to Antrim GAA, it's, you know, I always, you know, fierce proud of what the guys done in Croke Park last year. Although we ran it right to the wire, we didn't do it the easiest way. But and then I have this thing in my head, don't know about, and you've probably been to plenty of All Ireland finals. See the team that wins the All Ireland final, they play their county song. You know, and for the first time I heard the Glens of Antrim, or the Green Glens of Antrim, played in Croke was this year when the Camogues won. I heard it on the TV. I wasn't at the match, but I heard it on the TV, and I said, "Geez, I want to be standing in Croke Park after an All Ireland final with the Green Glens of Antrim playing."
I'm gonna cry.
Don't even cry. That's what I want. That's what I want to hear. So I'm in a position now that my business has the ability to invest in that. And make no mistake, Antrim GA will be a good sponsorship for us. We're doing it also for commercial reasons. And you know, our brand will be hopefully in every household. It's a GA household, because everybody, if you're from County Antrim, every kid wants their Antrim GA top. So we'll be in every household that's within, I suppose, the GA community. So that's an important thing for us. But to be in a position to be able to invest in that, and where the money's going to, you know, through the teams, like the teams that you're playing on, Donald, to give them what they need to be able to climb the steps in Croker. You know, that's a big thing for me.
It's massive, because even though it might not look like it, and players, you know, we just get on with it, we're out training, we're flat out, and you know, you walk into the changing room and there's meals sitting there for you, and there's protein sitting there, and your vitamins and all these things. And by the way, Antrim have, you know, the progression that Antrim has made in the last couple of years in terms of all that, in terms of looking after the players, in terms of what way we're treated, is absolutely unbelievable, and it's phenomenal. And it's people like yourself and Tony Shivers and these people coming together, and the Saffron Business Forum, of course, who have put these things in place for us. And to say that, you know, often people probably look in and you would think that we don't see it, but we do, and from the hurling side of it anyway, and we very much really appreciate what you're doing, like, and I think it's unbelievable. And even what you said there about how much it means for you to sponsor Antrim and put Pearse on the Antrim jerseys, and the passion, and you could see it in your face. I actually sat up straight. I thought I was going to go into tears, and I had us in Croke Park there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously we are where we are, and we have to respect that too.
Yeah.
But back to, you know, that Dominic sitting out the back on a Friday and Saturday night writing out business plans. Like, we all have to have a dream.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we all have to have visions, and going to bed every night thinking about that, or me thinking about, you know, that's what gets us up in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's the drive that we'll have. Like,
look, Donald, in life you bring a group of people together, you can achieve a lot, you know, and that's why, you know, tradition's one thing for all these teams in Ireland. You know, Kerry in football or Kilkenny in hurling, there's a tradition behind them. But when they get together as a collective group of people, what they can do to deliver something, it's no different in business. It's no different in sporting life. If you have the right environment, you create the right environment for those players, then they'll excel. And like, I recognise what you're saying. The players do appreciate it, but there's still more. There's still more we can do. You know, we are still a wee bit behind the rest of the country in terms of how they look after their players, what their players get. Because we again, the way back, we appreciate the amount of time that you guys give up to play for your county, and you know, probably half of your week is either spent thinking about training or training, and preparing yourself for stuff. So, you know, you are investing your time in that, so it's important to the people that follow you and want to support you that we're doing the same, you know.
Yeah, and it's class, because both sets of you know, in terms of the people trying to put things in place in terms of finances, and the players who are putting in the work for training and stuff, have the same goal.
Yeah.
And I think that then can create the magic or whatever, you know, and you know, to say about sticking with the tribe and sticking with the winners and stuff like that, but having people like that who have the same goal is just, it's class, and it's so refreshing to hear, because you'd often wonder as a player why you do it. Do you know what I mean? Because like, I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, you're putting this money in the Antrim, you're spending this time going to business forums and stuff like that, and you see Tony running about like a madman, you know, just wanting to help. And there's often this big why behind it. Do you know what I mean? Why would they want to do that for us? Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And just to hear the way you spoke about it, like, and you're so passionate about it, and it's just so refreshing, like, and it's class, and it's. No, it is. It's just it means a lot. Do you know what I mean? And not just as a player, but I suppose even any supporters even watching and stuff, they'll see. Do you know what it is? There's pure passion there, and there's pure Antrim in your blood, or whatever way you want to look at it, and it is so refreshing. But even just moving on, like the fibre optics. That's how you say it, is
That's
it?
right. Yeah.
Fibre optics. You know, your vans are all over the place. You know, at this stage. But you started that at the same time as you started Fibres. We already touched on that a bit, like, but tell me a wee bit more about that.
I suppose the Fibres is one thing, you know, it was raising, you know, we went out and raised 100 million off slide deck. What are we going to do when we get this 100 million, you know, that you think about the risks around it. When we were evaluating the risks of actually doing this in the wider market, it's that availability of resource to be able to actually physically do the work, you know, in a timely, efficient manner, and that your costs aren't running away with themselves. So one of the biggest, I suppose, things that we had noticed from you know, when they talk about Fibres, we're part of an alternative network community, the Altnets, and we're all trying to vie for the same kind of resource pool.
Okay.
And unless you have real good relationships and you can get access to that resource pool, then your project can fail. So we didn't want to be in that position. So we set up fibre optics at the same time, and what they do is basically the delivery of all parts of the network, from basically the cabinet right out to the home. You know, those guys, part of the rural build, they could be laying up to 10 to 15 kilometres of network a day, and that's literally guys in holes and guys up poles, putting fibre across, you know, every part of the country, you know. So that's what fibre optics is about. Fibre optics, actually, they would have, I think, about 450 people now in that business, versus 350 in Fibres. So it actually has grew more than Fibres, and I suppose in people terms, that business at the time, and you'll notice a trend, don't know, with most of the businesses that have helped to found, there's a couple of co-founders there as well. And that's an important thing for me, to not just be doing it on my own.
Yeah.
Pick the subject matter expert when you're doing these things, and he's actually my best mate, Sean O'Brien. He co-founded the fibre optics venture with me, and he's front and centre of that business, along with the CEO Nevin and the rest of the guys. So that's a big part of starting businesses. You know, I'm not an expert in telecoms. I'm not an expert in digging holes. I'm certainly not an expert in getting up poles either. But bring people along with you that can help achieve your goals and your dreams, you know. And
that's powerful too, like, because I actually remember listening to Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool manager, talking about this, and he was like, more or less said the exact same thing that you said. Like, he's like, I don't know everything. I don't know much about stats. I don't know much about the technology side of it. And he's like, but what I do is get the best people in that field in, and I listen to them. And it's something that, you know, even my event, it's good to talk, it's good to listen. You know, because we always have this thing about it's good to talk. And the rehab centre that I was in, Sister Concilio has a famous saying about God give you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen twice as much as you should be talking. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and even for you to even say that, and, you know, obviously you're taking a lot in, you're taking a lot of, you know, advice, a lot of guidance, and
but it wasn't, if I can say, Don, it wasn't always the case.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't always the case for me. You learn it.
Yeah.
And you'll hear plenty of people, you know, they'll read quotes from books and all the cliches there, surround yourself with more people. When you look around the table, you know, kind of feeling inferior.
But they weren't there on that Saturday night when you were sitting at the back in the bar.
No, they weren't. And, you know, and I mean, you chat about this thing called imposter syndrome. It's until a few years ago, I had no idea what imposter syndrome was, and until somebody told me I had it, it was the first time that I could actually start to deal with it. And I say deal with it, it's not that big a thing.
Yeah.
I suppose what imposter syndrome is. It's, you know, where you feel that you need to be an expert in everything, and if you don't know enough, you can feel very inferior. You know, the word imposter in itself, it's a funny thing.
But yeah, and it's something that even I'm probably experiencing it now, and we've talked about it, Dominic, you know, in terms of me going to places and knowing my value in terms of what I'm delivering whenever I'm going to schools or clubs or whatever. Now that I have, you know, even the first event rattled, you know what I mean, since I put it out there, I am, to be honest with you. Am I good enough? Or whatever? Do you know, all these things are coming in, you know, is this the right thing for me? Am I delivering the right thing? And I can see where it can stop people in terms of business and in terms of, like, breaking them barriers. Was there ever a point where it nearly stopped you, or you got to the point where you were questioning yourself that much, or is it whenever someone made you aware, you were like, right, I need to work on this and develop, or...
I wouldn't say it ever stopped me.
Yeah.
Always had that feeling, but it never stopped me doing anything. If anything, it gave probably a level of anxiety.
Yeah.
That's probably what it gave you, but it never stopped me doing anything, because ultimately the plan is the plan and you have to go after it. And that was always my driving force, but it was always that wee thing niggling at me, you know. And it's so funny. When somebody told me about it, it was only then that I could realise how bloody silly it was, how silly the feeling was. You know, it's you know, and a lot of successful people have it. It's this inability to assess your achievements and really understand your achievements. And it is funny, it takes people to tell you, I actually step back sometime and go, do you actually realise what you're doing here? You know, you're employing nearly over 1,000 people in all your different businesses. It takes people to tell you it sometimes, and that's what kind of imposter syndrome is.
Yeah, and whenever you were made aware, because awareness is a big thing, you know, and it's something that we talk about a lot, obviously, on this podcast. That awareness, it helped you then, did it? So what I'm trying to say is, what sort of, if someone's watching and they sort of have this sort of, probably the way I'm feeling at the minute, do you know what I mean? I'm aware of it, so I know it's on me. But a lot of people would think that it's actually a real thing, and other people think that too. what advice would you give for them, I suppose, in terms of if it is sort of holding back, or they're afraid to push that barrier down?
Aye, well, how I basically dealt with it is somebody telling you have it first, then I just parked it.
Okay.
And then every time I kind of feel like it, then I go, wise up,
Right.
silly, it's just a silly thing there, bloody park it and move on. So that's how I deal with it. And then if you're, if it's really getting on top of you, listen back to what people have told you in terms of your achievements. Go back to those, and people that you trust and people you respect, and them's the type of people that will come forward and tell you these things.
Yes.
Because they're honest, genuine people, and they'll tell you, geez, what you're doing is really, really good. Always go back to that, because that'll help you park it and move on.
Yeah, and believe what they're actually saying and accept it. Something
Exactly.
that I struggled with too, personally, for a while, or actually people, like, the impact that you're making is amazing, and I'm going like, why is that? No, it's not. But now I'm actually going, do you know what it is?
Yeah.
And I'm telling myself it every day, and,
Yeah.
and the difference in myself, and it's not other people's perception, it's my own perception of me, and that person looking back at me in the mirror. And I think it's powerful whenever, what we talked about before, just being comfortable with what you're doing, and then the goal then becomes more achievable, because you're like, there's nothing getting in my way here.
Yeah.
But it's class. And then even moving on, I've touched on both of them, the B4B and Weave, what they do, and you did mention across the board you employ over 1,000 staff, like, and that in itself is just incredible. But tell me a wee bit more even about B4B and Weave, and what impact that they're making as well.
Yeah, so B4B is it provides services for businesses only, so it doesn't do but like for Fibres does, the residential services. So it'll provide services for businesses, so all your telecoms, your IT, basically. See anything even in this room here now, Donald, B4B could support you with sourcing a replacement, or providing you with a connectivity into the building. It's kind of network agnostic, so it'll basically use whatever network's available.
Okay.
And kind of manage that service for you as a package. And then I suppose we touched on it earlier. So Thomas and I, probably about 9 months ago, Tommy was running B4B, and Tommy's an exceptional guy, very, very talented man. And B4B, as it is, it's kind of, it's well set up now, and it's, there's good management team in place, and it's growing itself. And for somebody like Tommy, I just felt Tommy was he was probably wasted just sitting in the day-to-day business. So, we both actually at the very same time, he was thinking the exact same as I was. What could we spin off of B4B, try something new? So we I suppose the next big thing I see out there is the whole renewable space, and where we're going in terms of probably electrifying everything that we do. Was this space of electric vehicles, and like Fibres, we were solving a problem, that digital divide, getting out there and giving people connectivity. It's the same thing for electric vehicles. We have one of the worst electric vehicle charging networks in Ireland and the UK, so we're well down the pecking order. Okay. So I suppose just like Fibres, we agreed, right, we're going to do something about this. So we've announced we're going to do a £20 million rollout of charging points across the whole of the north, and some of the Ulster counties as well, to basically fix that need that people have there. We have one of the lowest adoption rates of electric vehicles as well. The reason for that is because of the lack of infrastructure. So by putting that infrastructure in place, then more people will start to buy electric vehicles. And what flows from that then is you're having a positive impact on society and environment. And
price goes down.
And the savings that you get from a fuel point of view. So it's all about that. It's back to those key pillars: the impact, the legacy, and having a bit of fun.
And which is incredible, because like during the whole way through our conversation, we're talking about how this is going to make people feel. and it's like, these people within your businesses I'm talking about, so whether it's Pearse and the digital poverty, whether it's this with the electric cars and stuff like that, and there seems to be a big drive around how you're going to impact people rather than, obviously we're all here to make money, I get that, rather than the success of the money. It nearly seems like that will look after itself if you have a like these core beliefs.
Yeah, no, and don't know. Would
that be a fair reflection?
It is. It's absolute. You're on the money. It's about the thing.
Yeah.
It's about the thing. It's about what could we do as a collective bunch of people. Obviously, money and having a nice home and having the car that you want, the output of success. Yeah. But most people, I'd say, that runs their own business, owns their own business, will tell you that's not the driver.
Yeah.
It's about creating the thing, creating the legacy, employing the people, seeing how passionate people are to work for the business that you've found it and created it. That's the thing that's the currency.
And you can see it in you.
That's the currency. It's nothing really to do with money.
Yeah, and that's class. And for all this to happen, Dominic, and to have these businesses 4 or 5, to have over 1,000 employees, there has to be a good leader within you, and a lot of responsibility. But tell me a wee bit more about leadership, or what your view is with leadership, or how you lead in business, I suppose.
I suppose the main thing for me is being authentic with people. And people really believing in you. They'll believe in you if they feel that what you're saying is believable. Quite often you'd see leaders within businesses and they're called the leader of that business, but the people don't believe in them. It's because what they're saying they don't think is true. So that's what I think I bring, in terms of if there is such thing as leadership skills. I don't try and dress it up. I say it exactly how it is. I'll be truthful with our people. I'll tell them what we're doing well. I'll tell them what we're not doing well. I'll tell them of the impacts of that. Because sometimes, when businesses are going wrong, the biggest thing that will happen there is the leadership will cover up and not really tell the people what's going on. So, and I suppose part of that is empowering people to deliver the plan and giving them ownership of it. That's the biggest thing that I feel about the people in Pearse at this moment in time. They have a real sense of ownership of the business. They really care about its success, and that's us empowering them to do their jobs and making them understand the impact that they're having. So could sit here and talk for hours about what the book says about leadership, but it's just a few wee fundamental things that I think is probably what I do well.
No, and being authentic, it's something that is one of my core values, I suppose, is being me and and I think it's a brilliant trait in a way to have in terms of dealing with people and working with people, for the staff in Pearse to have that ownership, it can only be created by the environment that you and that you provide. Do you know what I mean? So it's creating that place where where they feel like they are part of it and that they want us to do well, rather than your man sitting up the stairs there with his feet up having a coffee and it's all sunshine and rainbows while we're down here, we're busting our chaps here. So it's creating that environment, because in so many workplaces it is near enough like that, and there is a divide. But the fact that you're let's do it together and let's go on this journey, it's incredible.
But you know what? Again, back to the community thing. Yeah. Being part of the community gives you that grounding.
Yeah.
So it's the same in business. If that's how you're built, that's how you've been reared. It doesn't matter whether you're the top of the organisation, the bottom of the organisation. You have that grounding, and we like our social events in Pearse as well. And we'd one there in Titanic Belfast last week, and I said, as part of my speech, I always leave those events really, really proud of how invested the people are. We talk in Pearse about people investing their careers in us, because actually that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Your career is actually can be a short period of time, and it goes by like that. So if you're spending 5-6 years, you're actually investing your career in fibres. So it's important that they feel part of the journey, and they very much are. Very, very proud of them.
Yeah, it's incredible. Even the way you speak about them too, it's nearly like a family. It's class. But obviously there are all the good things, Dominic, and we've talked about the success, and so we should, and that's why I've spent most of the podcast talking about the amazing things that you've done and the amazing businesses that you've built and the communities and all, and everything that comes with it. But as I just mentioned there, everything isn't always sunshine and rainbows in terms of challenges and setbacks and stuff like that. Tell me a wee bit more about, if there was any sort of setbacks along the way, because it is so often, and we're big fans of Stephen Bartlett's podcast, The Diary of the CEO, and it's often that you hear these successful people who have got to the top, often had a few hiccups along the way, and have you ever experienced anything like that?
I can't say that there's been any,
or even major challenges, or
there's plenty of challenges. The biggest worry I have has not been able to realise the opportunity. You get what I mean by that?
Tell me a bit more.
So the likes of Fibres, when we started Fibres, and the opportunity was in front of us, to really take a good chunk of the market, to be a household name. That was there for us, and my biggest fear was, shit, what if we don't actually mobilise quick enough? If we don't get the right people in, if we can't get the money, if we can't, this, that, or whatever, we can't do these, or get all these things in place to allow us to create the opportunity. That's the biggest fear I have, or I had. I don't really have it anymore. So, that's the biggest worry you would have in business. I'm, very, very fortunate that most things that I've done in my life to date, I haven't had any major setbacks. That's not to say they're not going to happen. With the business, the kids, and been from a hurling community in Dunloy, we're fairly successful there, and that gives you
Don't talk to me.
Right, okay. And hopefully then on the Antrim front, we'll start to see some benefits there now too.
Yeah, and there's a really good book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it is like it, and fear is just nearly like a feeling, and you mentioned there, and I talk about it all the time. It's the fear that you have with the opportunity. So if I sort what we've talked about throughout, about being comfortable and stuff like that, if I sort that out, then I can go for it, and that's what you've clearly done. And you talk about that there hasn't been that many setbacks and stuff, but it's obviously for a reason, Dominic. Do you know what I mean? It's because you're so hard working and you're so driven, and you haven't got ahead of yourself. Your feet are still on the ground, and you have that community around you, and you've put a lot of things in place and a lot of measures in place to succeed.
Aye, but another thing I would say is invest time and understanding what's went wrong for other people.
Yeah.
Because, and I spent a lot of time analysing other companies. Some of the guys in Fibres, particularly Colin the Chair, would always say, Dom, how do you know that about that? So I spent a lot of time understanding what they're doing well and what they're not doing well, and that helps you avoid those big setbacks. If you can understand what's not working for somebody, then that'll help you succeed. So that's probably just another way.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Do you know what I mean? To have that, and even that awareness, right? Not even what to feel in, what to do well in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Picking out wee nuggets and using it to your own advantage.
But that's what business is all about. Yeah. Well, for me it is anyway. Like, there's nothing. I have no proprietary, solution or patented product or anything like that. What I basically got myself involved in is stuff that other people are doing. It's what we're doing in Fibres is David versus Goliath. BT listed multi-billion-pound valuation company versus Fibres. That we're getting there. We're 500 million in finance at the moment, but it's understanding that the big guys don't do well, and then tap into that, and that's where you'll succeed. And we're constantly talking to our customers, always talking to our potential customers of what they want from Fibres, and it's all about service. It's that they want to feel like them as a customer, you care about them and going that bit of an extra mile for them to get them the service. So it's tapping into all that stuff.
Yeah.
Understand the environment you're working in.
Absolutely, and it's class. And even just like, I could talk to you for hours, Dominic, to be honest with you, about a lot of different things. And I think that I said to you at the start, well, we should definitely keep in touch, and I definitely will be keeping in touch with you, because like, I feel even the energy coming from you, even the passion and the drive, and you know, and obviously we've talked about it, and I have that too, and it's just going in what direction, like how do I, you know, channel this energy, how do I, you know, make a career out of it, I suppose. And I don't think there's any other better man to spend another hour or two with.
We all learn from each other.
Yeah, and it's incredible.
We all learn from each other. Everybody's different.
Yeah, and so even on the hurling front and with the Loy and Antrim and stuff like this, am I going to have to? I'm going to have to look out for these youngsters' years coming through. Are they involved with the camogie and the hurling?
Funny, yesterday was the kind of the end of year celebration for the P1. So my son's in P1, and thank God he's really interested in hurling, and hopefully that remains the case. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I won't be forcing him down and pushing him out the door to go and play hurling if he doesn't want to. But so far so good. He's enjoying it. And you know, we were actually saying that after we were thanking the coaches and stuff, and one of my comments was, you know, guys, you can think back to now when one of these guys is walking up the steps to lift the cup, the volunteer cup, and win the Antrim Championship. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So Pearse is hurling, and the two girls, they've started their fundamentals as well. Fianna's 3 and Caragh's 4. And they're both going over their wee hurdles and all already, so they are. So
class, and it would be something you want to jump into, a bit of coaching or anything like that?
At some point in time, once they get a bit more time back, of course, want to be about. But I'm not sure I'd ever get involved in a team that has my own children in it.
Yes. Because
I've seen that so many times down the year, and the pressure that puts on the kid. Never mind anybody else, you know, that your father's involved in running the team, or probably I had that myself. My dad was involved in all our team. Not that I felt that much pressure from it, but I've seen it in other teams, and I don't think that's something I'd want to do with my kids.
Yeah, Dominic, unbelievable, great to have you, and absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and again, I suppose on behalf of everyone from Antrim as a supporter, and your supporter too, and as a player, I would just like to thank you so much for what you are doing. Like as I said, not just with Fabris going on, obviously it's a massive part, but in terms of what you're doing with the business forum and getting people together, and it's just absolutely incredible, and I want to thank you so much, and I think you're great. And
cheers, Tom. Thank you.
If there's ever any time you have that wee bit of imposter, you can go back and watch me saying I think you're great.
Exactly.
But no, brilliant. Thanks very much, and thanks all for tuning in and listening. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and give it a wee share on your platforms. But yeah, thanks so much, and it's good to see you. Good to have Sean back, and don't forget the link is at the bottom for our live event in January, which is almost sold out. So go check it out, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.